Hey, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, the Friday DFS version. We are back. We have been playing some older episodes of some good content. We talked about general DFS, but we are back talking football. We'll be back every week this season, talking the full slates, talking DFS, talking DraftKings, FanDuel, Yahoo, whoever you may happen to play. Looking forward to that. I should probably tell you that I am Scott Jenstad. We are sponsored by WynnBET. I am joined, as always, on Fridays by Andrew Laird. Andrew, it's a good thing. It's just good to see you. I had a lot of Friday podcast hosts that ended up leaving the company after doing a year with me. So it's been a few years with you. So I'm happy to see that. Happy to do that. One of my favorite things about football season. I love the 49ers, but I also love chatting to you every Friday. So I'm glad you are back. And how's everything?
Everything's good. Am I like the longest football co-host you've ever had? This is year 3?
Yeah. I think this is year 3, and the other 2 bailed after a year, like really fast.
I don't know. They couldn't handle the heat. Is that the problem?
I think they actually are both like kind of titans in the industry now. So I think they just moved on to like growing to be. It's I did with Vlad Sedler, who we know, who just started at FTN Network today, and then Derek Van Riper, who's at the Athletic. So maybe I'm just one who boosts people into like large, gigantic careers in the fantasy sports industry. Maybe I'm just a big catalyst. What's your problem?
Yeah. Apparently, I'm holding myself back, I guess, because I'm just being gifted everything else from you.
Right. So. Yeah. Cool. But everything is good with you?
Yes. Yeah. Does it feel like it's been like 10 years since like the Super Bowl?
It's funny. Someone's like, "Oh, what Super Bowl last year?" And I'm like, "I have no idea who played the Super Bowl last year. That was 5 years ago." And then I'm like, "Oh, Tampa Bay." It was painful. I just tried to forget it. But it's funny. Like when the Niners were in the Super Bowl, like the next season seemed like came so fast the year before, and then this year just like seemed like a long time. And obviously we do DFS, so we're just kind of talk mostly regular football this week because there's no, we're going to save week 1, the main slate, for next week, so we can really dive into it. But it's still good to jump on. We'll talk some general DFS stuff, talk some overall football stuff. But yeah, it seems like a long time football season. I'm very much looking forward to. The Niners had a tough season last year. I think they're going to be really, really good this year. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, there we go.
And hey, you have Zach Wilson in your life now. There you go.
Say, I'm wearing my Jets shirt here, and
how are you excited? Are you for Zach Wilson? Honestly,
I was talking to my son about it. My son is now 10, and
is he more of a Jets connoisseur by now than you are?
He loves the Jets.
Yeah.
But like by week 5,
poor guy. Like, what did you do to this poor kid?
So this is what happens. This is the importance of family here, so you can appreciate the lows together. But there's going to be at some point during the season, like happens every year, where he's just like gives me that look where it's like, why do we like them again? Because like we don't even live that close to them anymore, and everyone else around where I live are either Patriots or Giants fans. And
does he like if it's like 27-7 at halftime? Is he like going to play something more fun, or is he like sticking out and watch the whole game?
No, we're like straight red zone channel at that point. Like,
so he likes other teams. More fun than
watching the Jets get killed. Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah.
So theoretically, I should be filled with hope because like whenever you get a new quarterback and it's like a rookie, it's a high draft pick, you're like, oh, like this could be the time when everything changes. But the ability for a franchise that feels cursed to turn around so quickly. Like if they get better over the next few years, then great. But like a rookie quarterback for this team just tends not to really get you excited. And I say that and I'm the person who still is like, no. Mark Sanchez went back-to-back conference championship games, once as a rookie and then his second year. So like maybe we're back, but like, man, I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting old and
no Adam Gase though has to be just fun in itself. Just that swap right there has got to be great as a Jets fan.
That was a total game changer. Yeah. Like at least that actually provides more hope than Zach Wilson. I feel
for
like
sure.
So it feels good to like have a coach that you can believe in, which is kind of nice.
And I hope it works because Salah's a really good dude. You never know you don't know how someone's gonna be as a head coach, but great defensive mind, a lot of fire, and a good guy. And I think that's like if you're going to have a starting point, like give me someone that cares a lot and is a really good guy, and we'll figure out the rest. And it may not work, and it may work, but you give me that as a starting point, I'm pretty happy with it as a fan of a team. Yeah,
and it seems like the players really like him, which coming from Adam Gase is like a
Niners defenders like ran through walls for him. They loved him.
Yeah, and the Jets had a lot of that with Rex Ryan, and I think ultimately the problem with Rex was that they kind of took advantage of how much he liked them. And so they got sloppy, and they just were like, they led the league in penalties, I think, like 100 years in a row. And it felt like it just continues. And Salah feels like it's like he appreciates that they are like professional adults, and like you can like them, but like we're here to work, and we're going to have some standards, and we're going to try to win. And so it feels, like I said, there's still hope, at least. Right. And the fact that the Patriots are terrible, or at least they're not the Brady Patriots, makes it a little easier.
Yeah, you feel, I mean, obviously the Bills are now really good, and who knows what you're going to get with Tua in Miami, and, if they make any trades or whatever. But I think you're not going into the season be like, okay, well, who's playing for second, because the Patriots have won it 18 years in a row, and it's just, No, I fully get that. So that's, it should be fun. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's football. The start of football is always fun. There's just something about football starting that's like, everybody's been talking about drafts and leagues for 3 months, and it just gets like, Twitter's tough for me at football, like draft season, like in July when people are like breaking down ADP. Like, I'm just like, I just can't do it quite yet. I'm a big baseball person and fantasy baseball, so I'm usually kind of focused in on that, doing other stuff. But once we get to this point, like you hit September, I'm fully ready for football, and I'm looking forward to like football Sundays in the garage, or something that I relish. And there's only 17 of them a year. It's a lot. It's a good time.
We get an extra one this year, though.
Oh, that's right. I got to get used to it. I'm going to mess that up. Just like I messed up the Washington football team 38,000 times last year, I will mess up how many weeks there are in the NFL season for sure.
You nailed that one right away.
They're only one bye still, though, right? 18 weeks, 17 games. Okay.
Yes.
That's what I thought. I know there was some talk of a second bye in there, but I remember looking at the schedule. I think it's just one bye.
Yeah, no, that would be a positive for player safety. And so they were like, no thanks.
I mean, who wanted an extra? I don't know who wanted an extra week, but for us, an extra week of DFS, I guess that's good. Although by the end of the season, you're probably so tired of me, that's going to sound terrible.
No. But we at least replaced like a week of preseason with a real game. So that was nice.
Yeah, although it'll be interesting to see those last couple of weeks if we get like two like normally week 17s, or teams care that second to last week, or if I wonder if coach is maybe in week 9 like, this is gonna be my off week for my running back because we're gonna need a break. So it's gonna be interesting if there's gonna be any kind of load management NBA stuff that you see a lot in basketball. If an extra game does it, it's only one extra game, and the NFL games are so important because so few of them. I can't imagine you get some of that, but I just wonder if we get some maybe easing back on running back carries at some point in the middle of the year. It'd be interesting from a DFS angle if we're going to have to factor that into our research.
As if like random Sunday morning COVID issues aren't enough.
Oh yeah, that is going to be. We didn't run into too much of it. Like I felt like we knew most of it last year. Like at least on Sunday morning, we had a couple that were like, "Oh, he's not playing," kind of thing. But I felt like we got really lucky from a fantasy angle, not a fantasy football season long angle. That was really tough. But from a DFS angle, I felt like by lineups were due. We knew most. We had a couple things, but not a lot of them.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And
I think you and I were both waiting for like season to be canceled at like week 7, and the fact that we made it through with that, they had that one like kind of hiccup in week whatever was that 3 or 4 where they like Baltimore pushed a game or whatever it was, and Pittsburgh was mad, but I forget what it was exactly. But they moved a couple games, but aside from that one shuffle, like they did a pretty good job.
I think as soon as we had like a Tuesday night football and a Wednesday night football, we were like, they're going to just play. Like there's.
And you're like writing up single game slate articles and stuff, so that was just brutal on you.
Right. When you sign up for 3 days a week and it turns out that sometimes it's 7 days a week, you're like, oh, that's.
Do you want to write the MAC college football one on Thursday nights also? You should jump.
Right. Yeah. Just what I'm looking to do. Yeah.
By the way, just a promo because you'll never do it. If you don't read Andrew's single game slate articles, one of the best things on the RotoWire site. It must take a ton of work because I look at it, I'm like, oh my God, this must have taken you forever. But I pretty much just use that as my starting point. I'm like, all right, now I know every single player I need to know what they're doing, and then I can kind of make my own decisions from there. But it's a really good starting point for those games.
I appreciate that. They do take a lot of time.
I hope you're still doing them now that I just said that. I realize that I should probably have checked with you first.
We'll see.
I may have just committed you to another season. Sorry.
Yeah. It's on a podcast, so I have to do it now.
Yeah, there you go. Because everybody listens. You got to do it.
Right.
So I know you're a DFS guy. Do you play any season long anymore at all? I know. Are you strictly DFS at this point? Where do you fall in the fantasy football world of this crazy world?
So I haven't played season long fantasy football in 3 or 4 years now.
Do you miss it? Do you miss it or not miss it?
No, like not at all.
All right. Like not even a little. There's no not like right now you're like, I really want to jump in a draft.
There's really not at all.
Interesting.
No, that's the whole waivers and Fab. Like I never was really into that. Fab's not as big in fantasy football, but I was never really into it. And best balls were kind of that way for me to be able to do that. Like the draft has always been the best part. It's still the best part of fantasy football.
Yeah, it's great.
And best ball allows you to do that. Like gets rid of all of the, in-season junk. But the way that you play best ball is really different than the way you play like traditional full season long fantasy football. And I did a few best balls last year, and it was the reason why I didn't love it so much is because I was so used to the strategies of regular fantasy football. So I'm getting I'm looking for handcuffs and all this stuff. And it's like what you do in best ball is very different. And so I actually didn't do any best balls this year either. And I pretty much have just been waiting for the NFL regular season DFS slates to start up because I didn't play any preseason either because that just gets like way too wonky for me. And the amount of time that you have to put in to be successful there. I just didn't have it with, I do soccer stuff too. So the beginning of the soccer season didn't allow the time there. So, but I was curious, like I know you still play season long fantasy football, and I don't know if you've been participating.
I thought you were say, I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, that could be the next question, but have you been doing best balls at all?
I don't. For me, I like fantasy football. I like the managing. I like picking guys up. I like picking my starters. I've played some, obviously. I'm actually in one that's actually drafting right now. The Derek Van Meyer we talked about earlier runs this pentathlon league.
Sure.
It's best ball, an auction draft, a salary cap draft. Sorry. You pick winners every week, a survivor pool, and then you play DFS every week. And then you kind of rank it like Roto Cats, where there's essentially 5 categories, and whoever's doing the best in those, kind of like a decathlon in the Olympics sort of thing. And it's tough because you really like, there's people that like, I'm a lot better at picking games than I am at doing best ball. And I've done well there. And I won the DFS 2 years ago, and I think I was last in best ball. It might've been my 3rd overall pick of Le'Veon Bell the year he sat out that maybe soured me on the whole thing, but yeah, it didn't work great. But it's interesting though, because I'm always in season long draft mode when I do those, and I realize that like best balls, like I assume you want to like shoot for guys that really have ceilings, because you need a guy that has like, if he has 4 huge weeks, that's massive, rather than the guy that scores 6 points a week. Like you're gonna end up never using that, or if you do, it doesn't really help you that much. But a guy gets 26 3 times a season, like that's huge in a best ball. And I think I need to get my mind in that. I just don't do enough best balls to really figured out the kind of the game theory there.
Yeah, there's significant strategy differences with best ball. Yeah. It's a lot more correlation and stacking than you normally would do in a season-long fantasy football league. So I think there are some like crossover strategies with DFS as best ball. But the reason why I was asking that is because I was wondering if there are guys that you were drafting in either season-long or best balls that would make you irrationally high on them for DFS, that you would see them on a slate and be like, man, I can't believe this guy's only 3,200. He's a beast, or he could be a beast. And it's like, maybe you go that road, in some GPG flyer.
That is definitely going to happen. You're going to have to talk me out of some of those guys. And especially, it's funny, you and I were talking about, what we should talk about. And like, for me, it's that first 4 weeks, like, cause you've been prepping for drafts. You've been thinking about ADP, you've been making all your picks, and you just get to DFS. You're like, oh, well, I like Brandon Ayuk in the 4th round. Like, how do I not take him at 6,700? And it just kind of works that way. Whereas if you get to like week 6 of DFS, you're so over not have thought about where everybody's ADP is or what they did the first, in preseason or what you liked in the draft. And you're just kind of focusing on, in week 6, like we talk, I'm like, well, what did Ayuk do his last 3 weeks? How are the targets looking the last 3 weeks? Who's playing quarterback? What's going on there? And you kind of break it down from a game perspective. That first 3 weeks are tough for me because I just have that stuff stuck in my head. And it's hard for me to get out of the mindset of this guy was a 2nd round pick, 3 weeks ago. How do I not take him as the 9th highest running back on the slate? Whereas so much changes in the NFL. Like every week is fully different. That's what's great about DFS. Like DFS is so much more fun in season. I love drafting, and that's why I still play. But DFS in season is way more fun than season long. Like I just have a team, and if guys are hurt, like there's nothing I could do. And if my team's really good, like all right, well I'm setting my starters, and there's not much I could do. I don't love trade leagues, so I don't play many of those. But DFS is just so much more fun in season. Like a whole new slate every time. It's like having a whole new draft, which is I think that why people have fallen in love with it. And people like it. And people are freaks about playing 1-game slates and all that. You write for all those people, but it's very true that the first quarter of the season, I let too much of my draft prep bring into my DFS prep. And I think talking to you helps that a little bit. I used to be way worse at it, but kind of talking over the slate with you, makes me realize that, just because I'm just using Ayuk because he's on the Niners, but just because I liked Ayuk 3 weeks ago and he's not getting enough targets doesn't mean you toss him in there at a low price just because you liked him 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. I think there's also a little too much schedule analysis in season-long fantasy football? Where you're like,
way too much. Like these people are like, oh, well, the Niners play this team in week 15. You're like, you have no idea. Like last year, I'm using the Niners examples in my head, but like last year, I've been like, oh my God, they're playing the Niners defense. You don't want that. By week 12, like you wanted that. Bosa was hurt week 2. D Ford never played. Like there's just it's so much changes in the NFL, and teams like Aaron Rodgers might get hurt and the Packers might not be a good offense. Like there's just so much to change. Whereas baseball, one guy gets hurt and, they can still be a pretty good offense. I mean, if Mike Trout gets hurt, the Angels are going to be worse, but they still have a bunch of good players. Otani's still going to hit. So there's a lot of that. But if Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, I mean, that completely changes, not attacking an offense or defense. Or if Chase Young gets hurt for Washington, suddenly that defense is like, oh, I'm not as scared as them. So I think the schedule analysis, like looking at week 14, 15 is something I barely do. I care if it's like is super extreme, or maybe they're set to play the Steelers twice or something like that, but it's got to be really extreme for me to even pay attention to it.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think a lot of people that listen to this podcast, the regular RotoWire fantasy football podcasts, are more season-long players. And so we jump in here on Fridays and we're just like, oh, we're the DFS guys and we're only talking about this.
Cause some havoc and chaos. It's good.
Right. Knock some plates over. But like, I think there are a number, I mean, obviously there are still plenty of people who mostly play season-long fantasy football and kind of dabble in DFS. And we're kind of here to help those types of people, I think.
Yeah.
I think generally our conversations are not like, here are the guys I'm going to have, 80% of in my 150 lineups. And so I think some of the strategies.
I think that's fun because there's a lot of that out there, and there's a lot of that out there that's really good.
Yeah.
And I don't think either of us pretends to be, professional or someone's going to tell you kind of how to play that kind of game. There are a lot of people that do really well at that. Your old podcast partner Jordan Cooper, like with stuff like that. If you ever want to listen, like his stuff is amazing. He just can play all that game theory and leverage so well that I wouldn't even pretend to like be an expert in that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think one of the things I always like to emphasize is the guys who play 150 lineups, like I think there's this belief that they can just get every combination needed. And obviously they're going to make a lot of money, but you can lose a ton of money playing that kind of strategy if you're not very good at it. And so the ones who are very good at it, like there is great skill in being able to make that many lineups. And it's just not a skill that I've developed. And it's just not a way that I want to play.
Yeah, but same for me. Like it's a skill I respect, but not one I ever plan on developing just because it's not how I think the important thing is that like it's okay that if DFS is just really fun. Like I love sitting down on Sunday morning. I'm a procrastinator, but still I love sitting on Sunday morning, getting some coffee or whatever and kind of figuring out my lineups. It's just fun. Like it's just if you obviously play as much as you can afford to lose and all that kind of stuff with bankroll management. But I think that it's okay to have fun with it, really enjoy it, and using it as kind of an entertainment money, and maybe you win something too. But you don't have to be a 150 lineup player to enjoy it. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And we talked about this on a podcast. I was going to say like 2 weeks ago, but it was actually a year ago.
Right.
But yeah, like you were asking me if I play season-long fantasy football, like the home league that I had converted to a weekly DraftKings league. And like, we've never looked back. Like it's so much better just for all of us.
Is it just the same guys, exact guys, same number of guys, everything like that?
Yeah, pretty much. And like we've added a few guys over the years. And the nice thing about DFS is like, if somebody doesn't want to play 1 week or they're gone, you don't have to play that week. Prize pool gets a little smaller, but like, there's a prize pool every week and you have a shot to win. And,
I know, cause you send me screenshots that you're losing at like 12:30 every Sunday, but I know you care about it. So it's just, that's fun. That's great that you have it with your friends. That's a really good way to set it up. And I don't think people realize that's out there. And people think DFS, they think, FanDuel and DraftKings commercials and people winning $1 million. And there's so many different levels. You can play for 50 cents if you want to. You can play double ups. You can play. There's just so many different ways to kind of have some fun with it. And I make fun of single slates, but like if it's Monday I use Pacific time, but it's Monday at 4:30, and I'm like, these two teams are playing. I don't really care, but like, sure. And give me a $10 lineup because I want to root for some guys. It's just a lot of fun and background noise if I'm watching the game, or even I'm working and half watching the game. I mean, give me that $10 to entertain me. I'll take that every time. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, totally agree. And that's why we kind of continue to cover those things, because people like to just throw in a lottery ticket. Some people play with 150 lineups and win with one of them.
Yep.
And sometimes people win with a single lineup, and that's kind of the draw of DFS, is that it really only takes one lineup for you to take down an entire tournament. But
so before we get into the next point, a note from our main sponsor, WinBet. There's one thing we appreciate here at RotoWire. It's making good decisions, and even more so, making the right decision. Listen up, folks. I have an incredible offer for you from RotoWire's newest partner, WinBet. the premier digital casino and sportsbook app. WynnBET is now the exclusive sponsor for RotoWire's fantasy podcast. WynnBET brings you all the latest action with a user-friendly interface, moneyline bets, boosted parlays, over-unders, round robins, live betting, and so much more at your fingertips. Want a break from sports betting? Head into WynnBET's digital casino, take a spin on roulette, double down in blackjack, slam the slots, or try your hand at roulette. WynnBET is currently available in 6 states: Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, and Virginia, while rapidly expanding. At WynnBET, the possibilities are limitless. WynnBET is currently offering all RotoWire listeners a risk-free bet up to $500 on your first wager. Download WynnBET now. That's WYNNBET. WynnBET, the exclusive partner for RotoWire's fantasy podcasts.
So you were saying that in order to, like, you don't look at weeks like 14, 15, 16.
I don't. And
like,
I know that
fine.
There's some really good players that do. And I know that everybody's, I keep bringing the Niners, but like the Niners play the Texans in I guess it's week 17 now, which is now the Super Bowl. And people are like, well, Trey Lance will be starting by then. And the Texans are going to be bad. And there's just like so many steps to get there. And the real step to get there is you have to make the freaking Super Bowl before you play the Niners in that week anyway. Like, you have to make the playoffs, then win 1 or 2 weeks, have your league set up. Like, you have to be good to get there. And like, once you get there, sure, if it works out that way, that's great. But I just like taking a guy in a draft because he plays someone week 17 in the NFL just seems crazy to me. Like, I guess in baseball, you like if you have someone that plays in Coors Field late, maybe that works because Coors Field never changes, but the NFL changes so much. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, the Jets could be 15-0 by then. You never
Certainly
know.
possible. I mean, there's probably bets out there if you want to do that.
Yeah.
don't you have betting available in Connecticut now? How's that work?
It has been legalized. It is not active yet, but I have to imagine it doesn't.
What the hell does that mean? It's just like in limbo?
Yeah, no, they're like, they have to get their licenses and stuff. I think they only have their permits, and so they have to take the test. But I assume it's got to be ready before the start of the NFL season, which
one would think that might be an important date for them to try and hit, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, you and I talk about, we do talk some betting on the show too. And I think that, we like to get into that a little bit. We talk some props and you write up some props on the site. I think that a lot of the Monday to Thursday podcasts here, they're all really good, but based on season long. I think the DFS and betting we both get into. I bet games. I can't bet games league in California, but I try and figure out lines every week. I'm just going to go ahead and leave it there, so I don't incriminate myself any further. But yeah, I think and it kind of goes hand in hand. Like we're studying so much DFS that like we're looking at a player. Say we're looking at I don't know who I was going to say Michael Thomas, but he's not going to play this year. DeAndre Hopkins. And we're talking about we like him this week. We like his targets, but like this week, like suddenly you can bet a prop of over 83.5 yards, and like it becomes really interesting. I think it kind of goes hand in hand, and that props market's really fun for people that really follow this stuff closely.
Yeah, and I think people take the props a little too far with like almost using them as projections.
Yeah,
which maybe not a bad thing, but like I tend to view them more just like comparing them. Like, yeah, is Michael Thomas at 83.5 and DeAndre Hopkins is at 93.5, and so does that mean I should go that way? But
right.
Whereas
you have to remember the casinos are trying to get equal action on both sides. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that, and bigger name players might have a bigger line just because people are betting them. So I mean, if you have Amari Cooper and everybody's a Cowboys fan, like that might be a little different. That doesn't mean that's a projection. That means it's the casino trying to make sure that they don't, go under on too low on Amari Cooper and all the Cowboys fans pound it. So you get a lot of that too.
Crush them, yeah. Yeah, definitely that. I was gonna say, but to the week 17 thing.
Yeah.
Like I feel like a big part of preseason analysis for drafts is strength of schedule. And I feel like if you get like, oh, so-and-so has has an easy schedule this year, and that can throw you off when it comes to a specific DFS slate, because it's like, all of a sudden they're playing somebody tough, but you're like, no. I remember I drafted guys from this team because they have an easy schedule. Like you just like, if you are very used to season-long fantasy football, one of the biggest problems that people face, or the problems they get themselves into, are the idea that like what you did for your season long league is going to apply every week for DFS. Yeah. And the simple like response is like every week is very different.
Right.
And it's not even just matchups, but like pricing and positional scarcity. Like there's a lot that goes into DFS where it's not just like, oh, let me just play the guys that I liked in the preseason because I like them, so they must be good every week. Like I'm starting this guy in my season long league, so I'm not going to play any, so I'll play him in DFS. And it's like, no. He might be a fine play in your season long league because that's who you drafted 3 months ago, but he could be the one of the worst plays on this slate because, his prices, he's overpriced for his production, whatever it is. But like I think one of the biggest keys is like focus on this week and this week only and figure out like why certain people like certain players instead now, as opposed to what they thought about them 2 months ago.
And hopefully that involves, tuning in on Fridays and listening to us to do that. Cause I think that, I play a lot of season long, but when I come in Friday mornings, like I'm not thinking of that at all. I'm thinking about this slate, talking to you about every game, breaking down matchups, breaking down positions. And I really throw the season long out the window when I think DFS. It really helps me a lot. It's funny. You talk about, we don't know what's going to happen, but like you look, there's a prime example last year. Everybody thought Tampa Bay was going to score a lot of points and give up even more points. Yeah. The reason nobody liked the Buccaneers, and the reason everybody liked the Buccaneers because Tom Brady was there and Michael Evans and Godwin, they had all these weapons. But everybody's like, oh, but their defense is going to be as bad as it was in 2019, and that's going to be trouble. Can they outscore people? They're like the number 2 drafted defense in DFS or in season long right now. Like they were awesome down the stretch.
They were awesome. Yeah.
They won the Super Bowl because they literally dominated the Chiefs offensive line, and Patrick Mahomes, who is the best player in the world, could not do a thing. Like he had no chance that whole game, and he made a couple plays because he's Patrick Mahomes, but like they were literally in the backfield every time. And it's like, it's crazy that we think of all these people that study defense, study season long, study football, and we thought they're going to be a below average defense. It turns out to be the best defense in the league. Like it's amazing how fast that switches. And you can say it. When you have a prime example like that, I think it really points out the fact just how different the NFL is, not only week to week, but season to season. It's a turnover like no other league.
For sure. And you also with DFS have to realize that even if they're a really good defense, that doesn't mean they're necessarily a good DFS, fantasy defense for that week. Because we talk about this, we will talk about it every week that like points allowed is really not what we're looking for when it comes to these fantasy defenses. You want to be able to get teams that force turnovers and turnovers lead to touchdowns, and that's where you want to go.
For sure.
But we'll get to that.
You want sacks. You want to pressure the quarterback. You want young guys back that might make a mistake or two. I mean, that defense comes down to all the matchup there. And obviously, when you were playing DFS, the price is a huge difference. I mean, if you love the Buccaneers defense and they're 5,000 and someone else is 3,200, like that's a big step up in one of your wide receivers, one of your running backs. And we'll obviously get into that when we talk about different slates, but it's all a big puzzle you put together, and it makes it a lot of fun. And, with the flex in there, whether you want to play 3 running backs or 4 receivers, depends on what type of contest you're playing and how you like this week. And there's a lot of stuff you can stack guys, then get someone on the comeback. And, if you want a receiver from the team that, you're looking for a high scoring game and you got the quarterback and the receiver, if you get the receiver the other way and it's 38-34, suddenly you've hit something pretty nicely there. I always use 38-34 as a score for some odd reason. But, we study a lot of the bets. We'll look at overrunners. We'll look at spreads. You got a team that's a 17-point favorite. Like that's not really a good recipe for a shootout. Every once in a while you get that, but you don't want 27-3 games. Even if you have the offensive players like that, it just puts a limit and a cap on your offensive players. If they're going to shut guys down in the fourth quarter and they're going to run the ball, 30 times in the fourth quarter. That's great if you're playing Derrick Henry in Tennessee, but not so great if you're playing Ryan Tannehill and AJ Brown and they're not going to throw the ball the whole second half,
Yeah, it's funny you use that example though, because I was going to say that we'll obviously talk about playing, contrarian plays this season, and we use sportsbook odds to figure out like which teams we want to focus on, but like rarely will we be like, I want to get different by playing the team that is projected to score the fewest points this week,
right?
And just expect them to blow up. But it's actually like, the most basic example is when everybody is playing Derrick Henry because the Titans are going to blow out whoever they're going to play. It's like you go play Tannehill and the receivers and go from there.
Yeah, and then you hope that they do score those 28 points. It happens to be on 2 long touchdowns in the first half, and maybe AJ Brown breaks a reverse in the second. Like there's a lot of different ways to do it. And you're right. There's we talked about the leverage and all that, but you talked about if you not only can you get away from Derrick Henry, but you can actually play guys in the same game to like get away from him and still take advantage of that matchup without playing the high percentage guy. Yeah,
absolutely. So you mentioned to me that you want to talk about contest selection because you're horrible at it.
I'm horrible at it. So can I be fully transparent and honest?
Yeah, of course.
It's gonna sound terrible, but so like 5 years ago, I came in second in the $25 FanDuel Sunday Million, whatever the hell they call it. I won $128,000.
Not bad.
It is unbelievable. It'll never happen again. Like changes that full year for me. Like it was huge, obviously very important, but it's hard. It's weirdly hard for me to try and go to DFS week and like win $12 now. And
There's nothing wrong with that.
And I
get that.
I don't play high enough stakes that I'm ever going to win that much again. It was lucky. It was 75,000 people. I came in second. Like, it's just one of those, like, everything worked out perfectly. And not only did my guys all go off, but nobody else went off that whole weekend. It was one of those weird days where, like, a lot of teams scored low except for the teams I had. And it's important to know that not only do you guys have to do well, like, you want other guys to do badly. Like, if you don't if you pick Drew, I used Drew Brees because I played him that week, but if you pick Tom Brady and you don't want other guys to go off, you don't want the other quarterbacks at a high percentage to go off. But it's hard for me to look at the contest, not be like, oh, there's that contest that can win $100,000 and then not enter it. And I don't play huge stakes, so I end up some smaller pools. But it's hard for me not to see that big number and realize it at once and not try and do it again. Whereas it's not smart, but it's just it's a weakness that I see that and I'm like, well, I did that once and it was great. Like, how do I not enter this team, at least in one team in that lineup? And it's not a good EV play for me. I probably am not good enough to do that much, but I don't know. It's a weird, strange thing that I hate to admit that it affects me, but it does.
I don't think that's a bad way to think, though, because you obviously have been able to do it. You hit the nuts one week, and so that's
hitting the nuts is not something you can. I mean, it hasn't happened in 5 years. And I've had some really good weekends, and I play cash games too, and I don't play crazy. And I upped my play a little bit after that, but I'm not a pro at this. Like, I have a regular job. Like, I do it for fun, but I up my play a little bit because, you want to, you got to bankroll a little bit now, but it's hard for me not to take that big shot. And it sometimes gets me in trouble because there's probably the way I play, there's probably like some single entry contests that are probably better for me. I don't necessarily play all the low percentage guys and try and hit that big extreme ceiling that a lot of guys do in a tournament. You probably need to do to win a tournament with 75,000 people in it. But there's probably some better contests for me that I can, win some money without just tossing it away in a contest that I'm not going to win again.
Yeah, I think so. There are two things on that. The first was that you were saying that all of your guys went off on that 1 week and nobody else did. And I think one of the things that a lot of maybe novice DFS players think is that they need to build lineups to score as many points as possible. And DFS is fundamentally about scoring more points than everyone else.
Yep.
And so if everybody scores 5 points, you just need to score 5.1 and you don't need to build lineups that score 100 if all you need to do is score 5.1. And so that doesn't mean like don't play guys for ceilings because you obviously need to outscore 75,000 other lineups, but
someone's going to score a lot of points for sure.
Right. And so, and that's where like what we talk about trying to get contrarian plays. Cause like if you can get 60 points from one player that only is on 2% of teams as opposed to the 55 points from a guy who's on 25, like that's why you win.
Right.
But fundamentally, like, is it that so how many lineups do you usually make? It's not like you make 50 of them.
No, like I probably make in a normal Sunday, I probably have 3 to 5 main lineups. And a couple of those I have in some bigger contests. I say bigger, we're probably talking like I probably don't play more than a $50 contest, but I have some bigger that's bigger for me. I probably have that in, and I put that in most lineups. Then I'll have a couple that I just play like in the $5 contest. I'll throw maybe my bottom 3 just in there to kind of see if I hit something. But it's a little scattershot, which is probably problematic. And I probably don't play enough cash games where, cash games you just have to finish in the top. It used to be top half. Now it's like top, whatever that is, 56% or whatever the rate is. But I'd have to look it up to know exactly. But I should probably play a little more of that because I feel like I can probably do better at that. But it's hard not to shoot for that. But I probably play 3 to 5 lineups most weeks. And
do you basically like have one, like do you rank them? Like do you basically are like, this is my best lineup and then just go down?
Probably so insane, but yes.
It's not insane.
I have my favorite lineup for sure.
Okay, and that's the one you put in like the bigger contests.
That's when I put the bigger contests. I probably have 2 favorite lineups, and I'll throw those in the bigger contest. Maybe one would be a single entry, one will be a big GPP, and then I probably have 3 or 4 lineups that are like, here's I'm gonna throw in the smaller contest, and I like some guys that I think are a little riskier, or I think that I kind of like we talk about them. Like I like to get them in one lineup, that kind of thing. And it's just probably a little scattershot for really like being as good as you could be. And I feel like I hit a lot of like really good plays. I just don't piece them together well. And that might be just I don't play enough lineups. Like maybe I just don't have enough lineups to piece everything together and get the right mix. But I feel like, sometimes I feel like we the last couple of years, we've hit a lot of good calls and some low percentage stuff. And I hit it. And like last week we had the Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, that huge week where they scored 5,000 points in the first quarter. And I feel like we should have really won big that week, but I had a couple of, running backs in the wrong spot. And maybe I need more lineups. And I don't know. You're better at that kind of stuff than I am.
Yeah, it's funny because I mean we talk Sundays, so like I know kind of what lineup, what guys you're you're hoping go off. And yeah, there were definitely times where it's like your player pool was right.
Yep.
But yeah, maybe it's that had you gone to 10 lineups,
right,
you would have gotten the right combo. It's not like you need to go to 100. Like you had the right guys.
And there's weeks the player pool is wrong too, and it's not gonna matter how many lineups I have.
Sure.
There are definitely a number of weeks last year where I really nailed some. We both did. We both nailed some guys, and I learned from you as we go along here. And I feel like I didn't take full advantage of like really making the right call because I had a 0 in the lineup in the wrong spot or that sort of thing. And I think that's probably anybody that's DFS. But I wonder if maybe you might be right. Maybe like the 5 to 10 is that spot where I kind of, if I hit my core guys well, I'm going to fill in and kind of I'm more likely to hit that secondary play too.
What's the draw for each entry? Like, how big does the prize have to be for you to be like, I'm going to enter that?
Oh, I don't. It doesn't have to be that. I don't want to make it seem that way. I just,
but it should be that. I mean, we're playing to like win whatever the top prize.
Right, but if I'm in a single entry that pays 10 grand, I'm fine. I'm totally good with that. If I'm a single entry that pays 5 grand, it depends how many people it is. But I find it's hard for me to go a whole week and not enter one of those big cons. Like I usually throw a team in the Millie Maker. Like, am I throwing away $20? I don't know. Maybe is it fun to think about when I'm in between games and I do well? I'm like, what am I going to buy with this million? How many Brandon Ayuk jerseys am I sending Andrew in the mail next week? Like stuff like that. I mean, I just, I think about you, but like there's some of that that's like, it's fun to do and it's fun to think about. It's fun to try and build the perfect lineup, but there is no doubt in my mind that me playing the Millionaire Maker is not a good investment because I play 1 or 2 lineups in there. And it's the way that contest is built. It's just all on the top line. It's all on the top line. I mean, there's second and third place are really good too, but like when you get to even like, I was in a golf contest last week, played DFS golf. It's a $5 contest on DraftKings. I was 29th out of 11,800 and it paid $40. And like, that's insanely good. Now, granted, I had it in the smaller ones. I ended up winning a couple $100 that week, which is, I play golf. I'll play like $40 a week. So it was a really good, like, it was like a 7 or 8X or whatever it worked out to be. But like, I'm like, that is almost a perfect lineup. Like there was someone that had a perfect lineup. Like it's 6 golfers. I had 4 out of 6 of the team that won $250,000. So, but like, I'm 29th out of 11,800 people and you win $40. It's like, it's those big contests are just, if you don't win or come in second, like you have to, it's tough because you're going to win 40 or 20 and those lineups are so different. It's just, it's hard to win. You could, but it's really hard.
Yeah. I chuckled a little bit that you used the term investment when you were talking about entering the Millie Maker.
It's not the right word for it.
Right. Well, there are people who play the Millie Maker every week.
Right. 150 times
and trying to win the Millie Maker.
Right. And they win it once and it obviously works out hugely for the year. And obviously the weeks they're not winning, they're still getting some back. I mean, you don't either win $1 million or lose. So,
right.
But I mean,
there are people who enter 150 lineups and lose every single one of them. And so,
yes, there are.
And we need those people to keep doing that, or at least keep entering so that they keep the Millie Maker going.
And
but
what is that? What is that? Is that $3,000? No, is that $3,000? $20.
Yeah, DraftKings mixes up sometimes. Sometimes it's 20. They usually have a $5 one at some point. Which,
but if it's 20, that's $3,500, right?
Yeah.
Am I doing the math right?
So, but like, yeah, and nobody wants to lose thousands of dollars,
right?
But like, I think the way that you play, it's almost like the entries into the Millie Maker are just like your cost of entertainment, and it's the other lineups that you're actually trying to win money on.
I think that's a really good point. And I think there's the other thing that enters my head. Like, what if I hit the perfect lineup and didn't enter it this week? And it's a terrible way of thinking in terms of like EV and making money. But boy, would I hate myself if I did that. Like, I'm just being honest. So before we get into that, a note from one of our other sponsors, Dynasty Owner. Are you tired of the same old fantasy football leagues that canceled after a year or so? If so, Dynasty Owner has your back. Go to dynastyowner.com. Their new leagues for the 2021 season are forming now. Dynasty Owner unites the fun and the excitement of fantasy football with the skill and strategy of the front office by incorporating a salary cap and real NFL salaries for the diehard fantasy football fans that want that real GM experience. Dynasty Owner adds a whole new level of strategy. Are you worried you won't be able to find a league to play in? Don't worry. Dynasty Owner can help you fill your fantasy league with enthusiasts like yourself. You won't have to worry about finding enough players. You can choose to start a league, join an existing league, or purchase a team from a previous owner. If you're serious about joining the big leagues, go to dynastyowner.com/RotoWire. That's dynastyowner.com/RotoWire and start your dynasty today. So we talked about me. I want to talk about you. You're very, very much of a cash game player, and you're very good at it. Between games, you tell me you've lost this week and the world is ending, and you send me your screenshots and you're there. And then by 4:00 Pacific time, you're like kind of sheepishly send me your screenshots and you've won every team that week. So it's how it works. It's like 10 weeks a year. You send me that exact same works out. But do you just play cash games? Do you stick any of those in like the cheaper GPPs? Do you try and like, if I hit a perfect lineup, I mean, you're building a cash lineup, so it's not one that's probably going to work in a GPP, but you never know. Is there any like, do you have what the problems that I have where you're like, oh, that would really suck if I scored 236 points and I finished first in my 50-50 with 100 teams, and that still makes me the same as 43rd place?
Yeah. So the difference between successful cash lineups and winning GPP lineups is so grand.
Yes.
That no, I usually don't like enter my cash lineup in a ton of GPPs. I'll enter it into one.
Do you jump over and build a GPP lineup like the guys we talked about, and you're like, oh, I really think this guy may go off this week? Do you throw a $5 entry in there just in some lineups to see what happens, or are you strictly disciplined just playing cash?
No, I'm very much not disciplined just in cash, and I think our podcast every Friday pushes me because I'm like,
right.
We talk about plays that make sense in tournaments and plays that like I would never make in cash games because they're just too risky, but I'm like, no, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I should play it. Like we talk about it. And so I play it. And so, yeah, I play just lower stakes GPPs because it's just the way that I just make lineups. I just don't think just the way that my brain works is more cash games. That being said, there's been this like big push. I say this sheepishly, like it's a couple of people on Twitter who play cash games a lot, but there's this move to basically say like playing cash games might be negative EV. And
so before you go that, do you feel like that's changed? Like it seems like cash, like lineups to the line you need to cash has gotten so much sharper in like the last 5 years. Like it seems like cash lineups used to be like you could roll in there, and if you knew about football, you could probably do pretty well. And I feel like you really have to really know cash games to cash now, and it seems like it's changed.
I'll say I think cash games used to be about avoiding mistakes.
Okay.
And as long as you avoided every mistake, you were okay.
Yeah.
And now enough people are avoiding mistakes. Yeah. And this is, again, it's not about reaching a certain point threshold. Like right. I have to beat more than half of the people in this, in these contests. And so there's this move to play for people who play cash games to play more like single entry tournaments or single entry or three entry tournaments, right. Because fundamentally like the odds where if you have a successful cash lineup, if you finish in the top third, theoretically that cash is more than double in a GPP.
Right.
Although not all GPPs, some of them are like 1.5x, which is just right. absurd. But
yeah, that's a Millionaire American kind of thing where so much money is on the top line that they just can't pay down the slate.
Right. Well, not even some of the flatter ones are still like min cash is like 1.5, which is.
You used to tweet a lot of those, and you'd be like, "Oh, 8th place, $17, fantastic!"
Right.
Those were always
and
first place was like $5,000, and 8th place would be like 26. It was you pointed out some of those. Yeah,
it's extremely drastic. Yeah, it's basically like $10,000 to first and 400 to fifth.
Yeah, because they're trying to sell that contest based on that top line.
Yeah, and I'd be lying if I said it doesn't work. Like I look at the $10,000 to first and I'm like, oh, let me go win that.
The Million Makers, same thing. I'm like, oh, there's 280,000 people, but $1 million to first. Like it's just, I fully get that. But so are you thinking about shifting? And then I want to ask you about cash games actually before we go there. Do you think that shift in people making less mistakes is the people who used to play cash games and lost their money and got out? Or do you think the information out there right now is so good and there's so much of it? There are so many great football writers, football sites, football content. Do you just think it's easy to kind of get and make less mistakes because it's easily to point out how bad those mistakes
are? What's weird is that, I think there's more cash game content, which is weird because fewer people are playing cash games. But there's this kind of just general, like, here are the cash plays this week. And it's not like, here's a lineup, but it's like, this is the group of guys. And usually, it's almost like people are taking we talk about this a lot. Like, the idea with DFS is like just taking the big player pool and shrinking it down into like an acceptable one where you're playing.
Right.
And similar to your GPPs, it's like maybe this number of players optimally you should try to get them in 10 lineups instead of 5. And I think the cash game kind of touting is gotten to that point where like everyone's like, this is the player pool. Pick out the guys you want to play from this player pool. And I think the lobbies have gotten sharper. And so, and the difficulty with cash games is that if you enter a ton of double ups, and head-to-heads help this a little bit, but if you enter like a ton of double ups at every price point, the odds, like the odds are high that you're either going to win them all or lose them all. Yeah. Like, it's very rare where you'll like win 40% of them. And
every once in a while, there's weeks where you're right on the bubble and maybe you catch some, but you're right. Most weeks you're 10 above, 10 below, and it's not really that close. Yeah. And
so when the head-to-head lobby, or when the double up lobbies, people who are playing these double ups is getting sharper, then obviously it's like you're going to have more weeks where you're winning nothing. And we've talked about this, like that's why you play more head-to-heads, because usually if you lose, if you just miss the cash line in double ups, there are probably plenty of head-to-heads that you've won. Right. Because there are just worse, theoretically you could be playing a bunch of the people that lost in the double up. So you both lost in the double up, but you won the head-to-head. And so like, that's why.
Of course, on the flip side, you could score 190 points and the person who double up scores 196 and you lose. But you're right. For the most part, you can win some that you would normally lose.
Right. And so it's actually more volatile than you think it is. Like, cash games feel safe because you're like, oh, I only have to beat half the people and I'll double my money. And that's what it is. But like, I will say, like, early season double ups, like cash games are much easier than later season. Like,
is that people have money and they're excited about football, but by week 8 they're like, I lost all my money, I'm out?
Yes. Okay. It's really that basic. And or it's less that they're out and more just like, I'm working too hard to win twice the money. Yeah. I would rather work that hard and try to win 100x.
Right. Idiots like me. Yeah, perfect.
Right. But everybody who's winning is going to stick around because you're winning. Like, you're going to keep doing it because you're winning. And so
you just fundamentally winning. You may take those winnings and play some GPPs, but you're certainly not leaving the cash games when you're doing well.
Exactly. And so I always say that, like, if you try to like plan out your year, your season of volume, which like is probably dumb to do anyway. But if you just like need to think of it, like, how much am I going to play this year? And you're like, I'm going to play, $100, $1,000, $10,000, whatever it is, every week. The percentage that you play in cash likely goes down as the season goes on, because like there are fewer people, fewer head-to-heads to play. The double ups get sharper, and you're like, maybe instead of playing this double up, I'll just play in this single entry GPP and try to win 10, turn my $25 into 10 grand instead of $50.
No,
and
that
you
makes
just
sense.
keep going that way.
I want to ask you a couple of money management questions that are right on that topic. But first, a final note from our sponsors at Sleeper. What do your fraternity brother Steve, Katie from work, and your grandma all have in common? They're all waiting for that invite to your fantasy football league. There's no better way to hang out, no easier way to smack talk, and no more customizable platform to host your fantasy leagues on this year than Sleeper. Whether you have a redraft league or a dynasty league that's been around for 10 years, Sleeper has everything you need in one app. Incredible commissioner tools and customizations, built-in messaging, support for snake draft, auction draft, and best ball leagues, blazing fast news, stats, scores, all in a beautifully designed mobile app and website. Makes every other app feel like a horse and buggy. Sleeper is the fastest growing fantasy sports platform for a reason, and all the cool commissioners are switching to Sleeper and not looking back. Don't take my word for it. Download Sleeper on iOS or Android and see for yourself. You have nothing to lose. It's free. And since we're doing a read, I do have a dynasty league on Sleeper, and my number one running back is J.K. Dobbins. So I'm really looking forward to that league this week. It's gonna be a great league this year.
That's why we play DFS, Scott.
Right. It really is, because you know what? I can just play Gus Edwards and not worry about J.K. Dobbins. But
at a discount, no less, in week one.
That's a good point. So I want to ask you about money, and then we'll talk about week one for a second before we get out of here. So you mentioned planning out your weeks and stuff. So you're playing cash games. So say you win 3 of the first 4 weeks. You started out well. Do you bump up for week 5? Are you sticking with that money management throughout the season? Like, how do you deal with that? I know it's a hard question.
No, it's not a hard question because I know what the answer should be.
Right. But you know what the answer is.
Well, I think a lot of people try to do like a percentage of their bankroll in cash games and GPPs. And I don't necessarily subscribe to that method. Like the old like 80-20, 80% cash games was always such a ridiculous, like it just depends how you play DFS. Like we kind of decided like, oh, this is what everybody should do. And it's like, there's no rule that everybody should do this. But
yeah, no, I know really good players who play 0% cash. Like it's just, there are good players that do both. It's just, I don't think there's any like tried and true rule. And like you said, like, I think you should do what's fun and good for you too. And like, I think that you want to play for enough that it's fun and it gets you into it, but you obviously don't want to play enough where you're like stressed out and like worried about losing money every week either. Like there should be a happy medium there where it's enough where it gets you excited, but you don't want to be, you're not losing the rent. You're not losing the rent on this stuff.
Right. It's okay to be upset that you lost a week, but like it can't be just like absolutely crushing.
But like 15 minutes later, you should be okay. It's kind of a good way to look at it. Yeah. You shouldn't yell at anybody in your family is kind of a good way to look at it too.
But fundamentally, like if you think of it, like if you're playing like a certain percentage of your bankroll each week, and if you are winning before that, then if that percentage stays, then the raw amount that you're playing the following weeks will go up. So yes, I do that. I will say I have an incredible ability to get absolutely smoked the weeks that I like really ramp up my volume. It happened.
I think it was 2 years ago.
Was it 2 years ago even? Yeah.
I literally think you were like 7 of the first 8 weeks and you ramped it up in the last like 3 weeks in a row or something like that, where you should have been still way up and suddenly you're 7-4 and you've lost money. Like I got arrogant. Yeah. That's how I felt. Like I was playing. You went 7 or 8. You're like, I figured this out how to do well. Like it makes sense. I mean, it's kind of human nature. That's what.
Yes. I felt like I had figured out NFL cash games and I like really increased my volume in, let's call it week 8 after that, or week 9. And I went right off the cliff. Like I lost, not like my bankroll, but like everything I entered that week, I lost. And that like really, like that hurts. Yeah. Like I was just sad. Like I wasn't even angry. I was just like, man. And I remember it was like my fault. Like the lineup I made, like there was a mistake in the lineup. And it wasn't like an unlucky injury.
Like you misclicked, or you research was wrong or something.
I think I just like misread popularity, and I misread a game that I thought I probably like went against the odds because I was like, I don't think this game is really going to go off, and it did, and everybody had the guy from that game. It was something where like I said, you were supposed to avoid mistakes, and I like made a horrible mistake, and I knew it right away. And I probably sent you the screenshot, like hoping that I was going to, the whole, like I'm losing everything. And I was hoping by the end it would turn. And then all of a sudden it definitely did not turn. But yeah, but then, you go back, you go the next week and you take your same percentage, but your bankroll's a little smaller now, but like you just grind it back up. But like the cash game grind, I think is just not as, I don't want to call it easy because it was never easy, but it's harder. And so if it's harder, then maybe I should be spending more time trying to, 10x my money instead of 2x it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And it's good. I mean, one of those things that like I think you learn lessons as you do this too. Like I think that you have, if you're doing really well, at some point you want to bump it up a little bit. I think that's smart too. But it's the timing of that never seems to work out fantastically well either. But so I just want to talk about. I don't want to talk about week 1 players, but week 1's really interesting in DFS because they set the lineup, they set the salaries a freaking month ago. You and I were joking a month ago. We're like, oh, we'll do the first podcast when salaries come out. I'm like, oh, that was yesterday. Like, and we were joking around it, and it was actually out. So if you have, it's going to be a weird week of like, I think you're going to have some highly percentage guys and popular players. But we talked about J.K. Dobbins, joking around. But I mean, Gus Edwards is obviously really low salary-wise because everybody thought he was the backup. And there's just a lot of situations like that. Travis Etienne got hurt, and James Robinson is now like. How do you kind of attack these first few weeks of the season in terms of that kind of stuff? Are you going to be like, oh my gosh, everybody's going to be playing James Robinson, so I'm not going to? Or do you just kind of like, I got to eat that? It kind of goes for a general topic of DFS. Like there always is the like Tuesday running back gets hurt and the price is already out. Yeah. and there's someone at 3,400, and we're like, how do you handle a guy like that? I always struggle with that because like part of me is like, I just wonder if that guy's not, he's not that good. But if he gets 20 carries, how do I not use him? But if like he's not that good, how do I not avoid 60% of the people using him? Like that seems like a big win there. So how do you feel like you attack kind of obvious, I guess we call them free square kind of plays?
So cash games usually play them. Like those are the guys you play in cash because if they do go off, you're dead. Yeah. And you're not only dead because you don't have them, but also because they're cheap. And so it allows you to pay up somewhere else.
And if they don't go off, you're not even dead because 78% of the field has them anyway. So like you're with them anyway. And you just have to beat those 70% of people that had the same player too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we talked about this on a previous podcast, but the reason why I don't look at week one salaries early is because it gives you a false set of time that you can build lineups.
Yep.
Like normally a week is more than, 6 days is more than enough time to like build lineups.
Yeah.
But we've had weeks for week one. And so like, there's no reason for you to like, think like, oh, I have plenty of time to like make lineups and make all the decisions. Like week one, like I said, when did they come out? A month and a half ago. And Sunday morning of week one, I'm still tinkering with lineups because like,
and they're not going to change. Just like I say, man, I think your point is true. Like, I don't think you need more than a week to build your week on lineups. Like if you want to tinker and you enjoy doing it, more power to you. I haven't looked at either. I'll look probably like Tuesday morning when I start thinking about this podcast, and I'll really get into it. But you're right. I don't want to be like, oh, well, that guy's a free square already, and kind of have decided and get preconceived notions in my head already. I like to break down every game, but like those weeks are tough, and we always get them. We had a couple of them last year where the $3,000 guys went crazy, and he had 22 carries for 110 yards and a touchdown. You're like, if you didn't have him, you lost. But there are those weeks where that guy, got 8 carries and the coach, used more of a committee. And I think, reading between those lines and kind of figuring out those weeks and which ones are which are pretty valuable if you could do it, but it's not easy to do.
Yeah. I think we also have to decide whether a guy is not a good play. Like there's the $3,000 guy. 3,000 is really cheap, but like, there's the $3,000 guy who, if you're like, I don't think he's going to be that good. Like, I don't want to play him because I don't want to lock in the 8 carries for 22 yards.
Yep.
But what you also have to consider is, do you also not want to lock in the 3 high-priced wide receivers you can play because of that guy?
Yeah.
And so, and it's not like there's a second, there's usually not a second $3,000 guy. You're like, oh, I'll play that guy because he's going to be better. It's like, no, they're usually 3,000 for a reason. And this one just happened to be moving up because of an injury. So these decisions are never like singular decisions. It's always like, what happens if I play this guy? And if I don't, now your lineup is totally different than everyone else. It almost doesn't matter who you play because you're so different from the 60% of people who are playing that $3,000 running back.
It's a good point you make. If that $3,000 guy goes 8 for 22, but got you in Devontae Adams, who scored 56 points, suddenly those two together worked better than anything in the middle. And it's a good point. Those are fun weeks because there's ways to get a little bit different, and there's ways it can really bite you. But DFS is fun, man. Week to week is such a good way for NFL. Like you said, I mean, I'm joking about J.K. Dobbins with the sponsor, but like it's true. That team's dead. Like I can't. It's a dynasty league, so it probably wasn't going to win anyway. But like I was kind of starting to build, and he was a key part. And like I don't have enough. I'm like that team's not going to win this year. Like what fun is that? Like. Whereas if that happens in week 3 in DFS, I'm like, well, I suck this week and I'm on to week 4 and we're looking forward to the podcast, looking forward to a new lineup. And it's just, I think I love season-long baseball. I'm a huge season-long baseball player. I will always say I like that more than DFS baseball, but I think football is just built for this. I think it's a perfect sport for it. We get 18 weeks of new lineups every week. Like it's just, there's no way to, it's just so super fun. It's a great format. It's a great setup. And the NFL is just such a 1-week animal. Like those games on Sunday are just, they're all together. Most main DFS slate don't have the Thursday night game, don't have the Monday night game. Like you can just lock in for those 6 hours and watch games. If you happen to be at home or you happen to be out with friends, like it's just a great way to kind of build that and have some fun with it and maybe win some money too.
I don't remember who it was now, but there was some big week 1 injury years ago that was like my last straw with season-long leagues. Like that's why I started playing DFS. Was
it Adrian Peterson getting suspended for child abuse? Because that was mine.
No,
I quit playing the higher stakes for 2 years after that because he was my second overall pick and he got hurt. I think he played a week. He might have played a week and got suspended for nothing to do with football. And I was just like, I'm dead. And it's hard to do. Yeah. I'm trying to remember who got hurt. I know who you're talking about too.
Like it certainly wasn't Brady, with his ACL year, because I wouldn't have done that to myself.
No, it wasn't. He did do that week 1 too. I know there was someone that got hurt exactly was it? And Saquon was what, like week 2 or 3 last year, right? Like it was really early, and just it's tough. And like baseball, like there's so many players you can kind of figure it out.
Yeah,
Football,
you can
like,
make that up over time.
In like an NFFC kind of format, like you have 10 guys on the bench, so like everybody's on a team, everybody's rostered. There's every once in a while you get a guy like James Robinson last year pops out of nowhere, but there's 12 teams in the league, only one's going to get him. It's really hard to find guys. So I just think football's built for it. But the key question I have for you, everybody talks about second-year receivers, which my question for you is, how excited are you for KJ Hamler this year?
I was expecting you to tell me that you had him in every best ball league, but
I won't be leaving many draft tables without KJ Hamler. I actually do really like him this year.
That was a Denzel Mims question, but I guess.
Oh God, he might be bad, huh? Do we think he's bad? Because it's not. You don't hear very many glow. There's not like a lot of like
not
Denzel Mims. Denzel Mims looks electric in camp. Like you see like the Jalen Reagor like one-handed catch, like Jalen Reagor great. I see no Denzel Mims looks awesome in camp stories.
The Trojan horse. Yeah, that's all it is.
Ty Johnson looks good. I hear that. You hear Zach Wilson looks good. There's not a lot of Denzel Mims buzz out there, which is not exactly what you want. Because I kind of liked him coming to last year. That was a big receiver prospect.
Mm-hmm. He was hurt for a while, and who knows? Who knows?
Are you guys are Jets and Giants able to play next week? Is the flooding bad? Like in stadium wise, like how bad is it in New Jersey there?
I assume they're playing.
All right.
It's the NFL, Scott.
Yeah. As we learned last year, we talked preseason. We're like, I don't know. You're right. It's the NFL. They're gonna. The Saints are playing in Jacksonville, I think, first week against the Packers. They moved the game from the Superdome, but you're right. It's the NFL. They're gonna get it done.
Yeah, they'll figure it out.
Anything else on your mind you want to talk about? Kind of general DFS, general fantasy before we jump out of here and we get ready for what's going to be a really fun season of kind of breaking down the slate every week. I hope everybody joins us because I think you and I both have a lot of fun doing this. We always talk about it takes some work and we're like, oh, we got to deal with this, but like. Once we're like 3 minutes in the podcast, I forget about everything else, and I just have a lot of fun doing it. We end up going too long, and we're always like, "Oh, we're going to talk too much," and we just end up having fun with it. So, I hope everybody enjoys that. I think that I think the camaraderie and chemistry of talking about sports is a fun way to listen to podcasts. So, hopefully, everybody enjoys it. If you have any suggestions for us or stuff you want us to talk about, Andrew's on Twitter at RotoWire. Andrew, I am at Scott Jenstad. Jenstad's JENSTAD. We're always willing to take some thoughts there. And as I said, we do this on Friday mornings usually, and stuff changes in the NFL. If you have questions like. Now that blah blah's hurt, what do you do with this stuff? We're definitely willing to answer that. You might have to delve through a bunch of like random soccer retweets on Andrew's page, but other than that, he will answer some questions for you. But anything else you want to address? Anything else that is on your mind before we jump out of here?
No, I think we hit everything I was hoping to talk about tonight.
Yeah, I think so too. I got a lot of Brandon Ayuk in here. That's probably going to be a name people are tired of me hearing because the dude is a freaking stud.
Yeah, I was going to say it's going to be all season though, so just getting everyone ready for it.
Before we go, Justin Fields and Trey Lance, what week are they starting?
6 for both of them.
I think it's a really good call on Lance. I think Fields is going to be like 3.
3? Oh,
yeah. I think
it should be 1. But...
Yeah, it should be. I think if it were me, I think both would be 1. I get what Shanahan's doing, but I think the chipped finger kind of hurt that chance of him starting week 1. But I think he's gonna play a bunch. I think they're gonna be. I hope it's not annoying Taysom Hill kind of usage, but I think it might be. And it's I've been ripping on Taysom Hill usage for years on Twitter, so I'm about to get a lot of retribution for that, a lot of fire my way. But I think 6 is a pretty good call on Lance. I don't know when their bye is, but I think that's about. It's about the amount of time they start off with Detroit and Philly. So if they can win 2, maybe that buys Jimmy some time. If they lose one of those, I think that the pressure really gets hit. They play Detroit and Philly on the road, and they play Green Bay, Seattle, Arizona, weeks 3, 4, and 5. So like they have a lot of easy games, as we talked about, easy games on the schedule that look easy pregame, but like that stretch right there, like if they go 1 and 2 in that stretch, maybe week 6 might be a really good call for that because I think that they may ramp it up. If they're like 3 and 2, I think they're going to have to make a change, but. I think Fields is. I really like Fields, and I think that I don't think they can go too long with Andy Dalton.
They look like they could be like really exciting.
Yeah, and Zach Wilson's week 1, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, him and Trevor Lawrence are kind of, and Mac Jones too. I mean, that's a pretty fun rookie quarterback class. We had one 2 years ago that was really good too. But that's 5 guys who probably by week 6, at least by midseason, are all starting for their teams.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's going to be Gonna be fun. So thanks everyone for listening to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, sponsored by WynnBET. We always appreciate everybody tuning in. We're going to be live on StreamYard, YouTube, Periscope this year too. So we'll usually be about like 7 a.m. Pacific on Fridays. 10 o'clock Eastern is usually kind of when we jump on. We will definitely throw links out there if you want to ask us questions live. We'll have comments live this year, which we didn't have last year. We just kind of we did video, but we didn't have live comments. So if you want to ask questions during the podcast, we're very willing to take that. I'll defer all of them to Andrew because he's better at answering questions than me. But I'm too locked in on my players. I'm too hyper focused, but he'll be good at that. So we appreciate you listening. We look forward to doing this all season long. We'll be joining you on Friday. So hope everybody has a good last week of drafts before we get fully into DFS mode and change your mind. Not worry about your drafts and get a DFS. So thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back at you next Friday. Take care.